Keith, what do you think about racism, and what did you see while growing up when it comes to it?
I was brought up in Mountain View, California. We had a lot of Orientals in San Francisco. We had Mexicans, and we had some Filipinos in our area, but there was never, racism was never a problem. I think what's kind of interesting, and I was just thinking about that earlier today actually, we had, when I was very young, I think I was probably 6 or 7 years old, maybe younger, we had a barber shop in our little town of Mountain View that caught on fire and burned. And my dad wanted to walk downtown and look at the building, and it was charred all the way through. But while we were standing there, the shoe shine boy, who was also looking around, came walking out, and he happened to be a black man. And that is the first black person I ever remember seeing. And of course, I thought he was black because he had burned in the fire. And as a small child, that's the way it came out to me. But I was brought up in a family. My aunt and her family, aunt by marriage, her family were German, and her mother didn't even speak English. And that's an interesting thing too, because my aunt didn't speak German. And I said, well, how'd you talk to your mother? And she said, well, how'd you talk to yours? And I said, well, we spoke the same language. And she said, well, we just talked to each other. But she never learned German, and her mother never learned English, and they communicated. Anyway, as far as racism was concerned, we didn't see much until after the war. And we had a lot of the GIs who had married Japanese girls, and when they brought their wives back, they were not accepted. And it was really kind of a sad time in American history, because there were some wonderful women that came back with these guys. And as the years went by, of course, it became more and more acceptable, just like most everything else does. But it was sad. But my family, I don't remember ever discussing race, or who was what race and who was somebody else. And I think it was a nice way to be brought up. But I have to admit, I had never gone to school with black people until I was in medical school. And and to me, they didn't seem any different than anyone else. I mean, they were just friends of ours. We were classmates together. But I had a kind of a sad thing happen. One of the other residents looked kind of like Belafonte, a really nice looking black gentleman. And a group of us went down to a little Mexican dive in East Los Angeles and for dinner, and a Mexican girl waited our table. And everybody, gave their orders, and the plates all came, with the exception of Nord Nation, who was the black fella. And somebody said, well, we're short one place, and she said, we don't serve, and she used the N-word. And I was so proud of my group. Everybody stood up at one time and started to walk out, and she said, well, who's going to pay for that? And everybody said, we don't know, and we don't care. And so that was one real positive thing in my life. I just really enjoyed the fact that I felt that the ones that, we were multiple races around LA area, obviously, and our group, nobody seemed to be aware of it, and it was great.